عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وارزقنا فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين. اللهم افتح إلينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الكرام ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله. بسم الله. So inshallah, today's session, I want to begin chapter 1 of the book. We did the introduction last week. That was just the introduction. So inshallah, we'll now be getting into the subject matter itself. So there will be a lot of technical terms. So you can take a look at these terms. You can write them down if you can't, if you don't remember them. And there will be some citations, some quotations as well as we go along. And I'll inshallah highlight a technical term when it comes up, because sometimes words are used in general speech. We have what's known in linguistics as haqa'iq al-lugha, and that's the, if you literally translate that, means the reality of the language. But what it means is how the language is applied. So sometimes some words you have haqiqa al-wad'iyya, you have haqiqa al-shari'iyya, you have haqiqa majaziyya, you have haqiqa urfiyya, and then you have urfiyya amma, you have urfiyya khasa, and then and the same applies to the others. So there are many different categorizations in which words are applied. So a certain term might be, a common word in general speech, but then in the subject it would become a technical term. And one such word is necessity. Necessity can mean something in general language, in general speech, but then in logic and in philosophy, it's a technical term. The same case applies to possibility or impossibilities. Possibilities and impossibilities, these are general terms, but then they have specific designations in logic and in philosophy and in epistemology as well. So this is what we always start off with. Every science in our tradition has what's known as mabadi'a ashra. We're not studying those right now, but I just wanted to mention that mabadi'a ashra. These are 10 principles or 10 art forms in the science. And the first of these is known as al-had. If you Google it, if you Google mabadi'a ashra, you'll find there's a versification. There are many versifications of that in poetic form that give you all the 10 art forms or principles that are applied in the sciences of our tradition. The first of these is al-had. Al-had has got two meanings. One is like hudud, for instance, the boundaries, the limits. So the had is what defines the limits of the science, how far it can exceed, what are the boundaries. And then and we say that because the truth has a limit. Okay, the truth, there's a limit to the truth. The truth doesn't just keep going on and on and on and on. Truth is very definitive. It is the most definitive thing you will ever know. And so it has a limit. So the science itself, which is an instrument, science is an instrument, ilm is an instrument that enables ma'rifah. So you use science to arrive at an understanding, all right? And then that understanding takes you to the truth. So if the science itself has got no boundaries, then you could be going in any direction and you won't know where you're headed. So that's al-had in terms of the boundaries or the limits of the science. And the other meaning of al-had in the sciences is terms and definitions. So every science has got terms and has got definitions. What are the terms used in that science? So in the science of eschatology, we have terms and definitions as well. And we will probably look at a few of those, inshallah, as we go along. And we'll be looking at the science of eschatology in brief There's a chapter in the book as well. It's to introduce you to the subject, but our subject of study here is a subsidiary of the science of eschatology. It's a component in the science of eschatology. And so it's a subject, it's not a science, what we are doing. What we are doing is a subject under the science of eschatology. And this subject entails the Dajjal, the imposter. So that's our subject. Even so, there are terms and definitions. And so, what are the terms we are going to be looking at? We'll start off slow as we go along because I don't want to throw everything out at you. It's going to drive you insane. So we'll go piece by piece. And since we're dealing with the subject of Dajjal, it's only pertinent that we define what does the word Ad-Dajjal mean. So linguistically, the word Dajjal in the what's known as the Nakira form in the language. Nakira means indefinite form. Dajjal. And it has a shadda on the jim and an alif after the jim. It takes the form of what's known as in the language as a fa'il. As a fa'al. As a fa'al. That's the form that word takes. Dajjal takes the form of fa'al. So in the Arabic language, you've got what's known as wuzun or wazan. Okay, the wazan is the form that the word takes. So you have basic words, verbs like dhahaba, daraba, okay, jalasa. These take the form of fa'ala. And so whenever you see a fa'ala form, you would usually understand it as a verb. It's an action. And so we say in Arabic that kullu fi'lin yahtaju ila fa'il. Every action, every verb has to have a doer of the action. So the fa'ala has to have a fa'il, somebody who is doing the action. Okay? So Dajjal is taking now a different kind of form within that same field. Now, Dajjal means imposter or deceiver. And the form that it's taking of fa'al, okay, Dajjal, fa'al, is the fa'al is a doer, a fa'il of the action, fi'l. The fa'al is the doer, fa'il of the action, fi'l. But he is a doer of the action in the active, continuous sense. He's not just a passive doer of the action. So somebody could get up from their seat and then go and stand in the corner. The action of getting up from the seat and the action of standing, okay, is a passive. Even it's not something that person is doing on a constant basis. It's not something that is imperative to their being. They can sit or they can stand. However, if somebody has, say, something as their occupation, for example, a khatib is somebody who is a speaker. And so this person is somebody who is active in their occupation. So in that sense, it is also applied as though it is an occupation of the being. It's something that this being is always doing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, فَعَالٌ لِمَا يُرِيد. He, Allah, is the doer of what He wants. So he's an active doer of that action. He always does what He wants. He always does what He intends. There is nothing that prohibits Him from doing that. There is nothing that impedes Him from doing that, from doing what He wants. He is the doer of what He wants. And so He can intervene whenever He wants to intervene. And nothing can impede Him from doing that. That is His impetus, His primus. Okay? Now, in the root form of the word Dajjal comes from the root word Dajala. And Dajala as a verb means to lie, to fake, to deceive, to fool, to cheat, to swindle, to con, to bluff, to delude. As a noun, Dajjal as a noun means who if you say huwa Dajjal, you could say he's a liar, right? So it means liar, charlatan, deceiver, imposter, cheater. Now, what's interesting about this word, that even though it denotes those meanings, it also has a different set of meanings. So the word Dajjala, with the shadda on the jim now. So you have Dajjala as a verb, and then you have Dajjal as a noun, and then now you have Dajjala. Dajjala means to gild or to adorn, to beautify, to bedeck, to garnish, to embellish, to decorate, to make it look nice and pretty and shiny and everything. Right? So you see there's an interesting dynamic here. When you understand why the Prophet ﷺ gave him this title, why he called him Ad-Dajjal, because he is a fa'al of these elements that are embedded in the meaning or in the semantic fields of the word itself. So in the Arabic language, you have all these semantic fields: Dajala, Dajila, Dajula, right? Dajjala. All these semantic words, these forms that they take, have all these meanings. And so he's an active participant of all these things. So there's an interesting dynamic here you see between lying, cheating, deceiving, and embellishing, adorning, bedecking, or beautifying. Because what do we say about a lie? For a lie to be acceptable, it must be convincing enough, but it also must look tempting enough to accept. If a lie is ugly, if I give you an ugly statement, okay, and I want to cheat you through that statement, you might not accept it. It's not pleasing to you. Okay, so if I want to show you something that's deceptive, I need to make it look nice so that it will hook you. It will attract you. It will bring you closer so that I can enact the next step of my trick. Some of these tricks are employed in the general sense by street magicians and stage magicians and all these con men and such. We'll look at that a little bit later on in the, I believe in the 12th chapter called Deception. Or the 13th chapter? 12th chapter. Okay. So we'll look at that in that chapter. There's a section there that I've explained how the neuroscience of deception works. How the tricks are played, okay, how the deception is enacted. Now, since the word, since the Prophet ﷺ referred to this character in the definitive sense, Ad-Dajjal, he did not say Dajjal, he did not say Dajjal. He used the term Ad-Dajjal, and therefore in the subject of study, following the proper etiquettes of academics, we are going to use the terms as they are meant to be used. And so we will refer to him as the Prophet ﷺ referred to him, as Ad-Dajjal. This is a distinguishing marker between a scholar who knows his subject and somebody who is just speaking out of a regurgitation of sorts. They're just repeating what they heard or what they read. A scholar who knows his subject, who knows his study, will use the proper terms and definitions. So you being students of the subject and the science of eschatology, it is imperative that you use the terms in their proper way. If the Prophet ﷺ referred to him as Ad-Dajjal, you have to refer to him as Ad-Dajjal. Or if you want to pull in the English variation of it, the Dajjal, the imposter. Use it in the definitive form because we are speaking about a definitive individual, a specific individual. We're not talking in the general sense. However, during the lectures, you might hear me, slipping it up a little bit here and there. So do forgive me over there. Okay. I might, bring it in once in a while and say Dajjal is going to do this and that and the other. Now, that's the first term. So we looked at what Ad-Dajjal means. The second term I want to look at is the English term Antichrist. So these are two terms we are going to be playing with because we are bouncing between two languages, English and the Arabic. And since we are bouncing between two, we have to define the terms in both the languages we will be using. So the word Antichrist comes from the Greek and has got two terms in that one term. There is the word anti, and then there is the word Christos. We'll look at the definition of Christos later on when we come to that chapter. Anti has got different meanings, and we'll look at how all these different meanings are applied to this particular individual. First of all, it means instead of. Instead of. Now, it's important to understand that the instead of here is a difference or an opposite of the same genus or the same likeness. Therefore, an opposite in similitude. Okay, so you could say fire and water are opposites. Okay, but you can't say that fire is anti-water or water is anti-fire. There's no need to say it. It is an implied thing that fire and water don't mix. They don't gel. But you could look at something like, say, 2 apples. You can take a red delicious apple and you can take maybe a different kind of apple. And if you compare the two, they look the same. They have the same color, they have the same texture, they have the same shape, they may even have the same size. So they look the same, but there's a difference between them. One might be really sweet and the other will be very sour. If you don't know which is which and you bite into the one that is sour, you're going to get a sour taste. Right? So that's what the word anti means. It is an opposite to the thing in likeness or in similitude, but it is not the thing itself. Anti also means in front of, and that has the meaning of something that is outward in form, likeness in outward in form, in front of. What's behind or what's concealed is different. So in front of the thing, they look the same. The Antichrist looks like like Christ. And we'll explain what that means, inshallah. We'll come to that. I know everyone is like, well, what did you say? Yeah. Yeah, we're going to talk about that, inshallah. It's an important element. But let's leave that statement where it stands. Antichrist looks like Christ. There is a similitude in appearance. In terms of actions, his actions are also similar to what Christ did, because he has to convince the Jews that he is the Messiah. He has to convince the Christians that he is the Messiah, and he has to convince the Muslims that he is the Messiah. So he is going to try his utmost to enact the personification of Christ. So there are some actions he will perform in which he will look like he's Christ. People will think that he is Jesus alayhi salam. Finally, the word also means before. Anti can mean before, and there's a component of time involved. And this is perhaps the most metaphysical meaning of the term, because there is a prophetic element embedded. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the Dajjal is going to come, and then Nabi Isa is going to come. Therefore, the Antichrist comes before Christ himself. The anti comes before the real. The opposite one, or the imposter one, the fake one, comes before the real one. Now, let me just read out from here, page number 30. The idea of an imposter is one who takes the place of the actual as a false substitute, who successfully assumes the place that is not rightly his, by deceiving others into believing that he is, like the replica of a painting or a sculpture erected in place of the original, bearing every similitude to the original, such that it is convincing enough to be accepted as the actual. The replica bears every similarity in all its particulars and outward forms to the perfect shape, shade, texture, color, and likewise only the marginally few with true insight and understanding might be able to distinguish it from as a false stand-in. This is an important piece here, because what's being put in place bears nearly every outward similitude to that which it is impersonating, because that's the premise of an impersonator. You would be a very poor impersonator if you did not impersonate entirely and most convincingly. And so they're only the very few who actually have studied the subject. So if you look at a piece of art, painting or sculpture, like the way they do in the museums, most museums will not put the original piece on display. They will have it locked away in a vault somewhere. And what they will put in its place is a replica. And this is so that they can avoid any damage to the piece, right? Or theft or any such thing. And this is the allegory that is being given here. That the anti is somebody who is a stand-in, is taking the place of, is an imposter. Much like the same way that replica art piece is an imposter of the actual one. Okay? And only those who have studied the subject of art or history who can distinguish it and say, oh no, this doesn't look like it's real. This looks like a replica, right? Only those who have studied it. And so that's what we are doing. We are studying the subject so that we can understand. When we see the imposter, we can recognize the imposter. That's the whole point of this. The Prophet ﷺ gave us the signs so that they can aid us in identifying the imposter. If he didn't tell us about him, we wouldn't know. See? So the signs have to be studied for them to have meaning, so that we can understand. Because what do we understand? We don't understand the sign. We understand the meaning that the sign represents. When we're exchanging words, what are words? Words are, letters are what? Huruf. What are huruf? Huruf are symbols. And they come together to form words, which are signs. And that's why the huruf combined together in the Quran are called ayat. And so those ayat have got meaning. And so it's the meaning that we want to understand. Understanding just the word alone, the symbol alone, is not enough. You have to know what it means, because a symbol, we say, always points towards something else. Its meaning, it's representing a meaning of something else. It's a representative. So, for example, people don't want to study Arabic language and they don't want to study grammar. Without that, you can't understand the Quran. So you have to study the grammar so that you can understand the language, so that you can understand the Quran. Because that's where the meaning is. But these are the symbols, the Dhamma and the Fatha and the Kasra. These are the symbols. So if I say, Daraba Zaydun Amran, I know that Daraba is Mabni, is Fi'lu Mabni, Fi'lu Madi, Mabni. It doesn't change its form. So I know, even if I see the writing without the Fathas, I know that it's always going to be Daraba. And I know that the Fa'il will be Zaydun and he'll always be Marfu'. And so even without having that, when I'm reading the symbols, when I'm reading the statement, I know it's going to have a Dhammatain. And I know that Amr is the Maf'ulun bihi. He's the one on whom the action is being done. So he will always be Mansub. And so he'll always have a Fatha. And so what these words that I'm saying, Marfu', Mansub, right? They don't mean anything to you. And that's my point, because you haven't studied them. You don't know those symbols. You have to study the symbols. You have to study the signs for you to understand the signs. And that's what we're doing. We're studying the signs. So now, since we're not talking about any arbitrary place of occupancy, rather a ranking seat, not only in the mundane affairs of man, but a position that has a higher, more existential and divine recognition, we are equally not referring to any common imposter who employs what? Street magic to fool people. We're not talking about all these other imposters. The Prophet ﷺ said there will be what? 30 of them. 30 false Dajjals, as they call them. We're not talking about those. And there are plenty of them. We can name a few, right? We have them. Zuckerberg, Gates, Rockefeller. All these are all false. They are imposters. In and of them. But why? Why are they imposters? Who are they impersonating? It's not just the impersonators, it's the act of deception as well. Because remember, he's an imposter. He's also a deceiver. And the deception that they enact on a global scale makes them Dajjal. But they're not the actual Dajjal. But they are in that category. And it doesn't take much for you to see them and recognize and say, Hada Dajjal. There is no other explanation to who they are. They can't be angelic. They are demonic. That's their personification. They are always plotting and deceiving. They are acting demonic. And they want to present to the world that they are saviors. They're presenting themselves as saviors, but they are deceiving the people with all their planning and plotting and everything. They are Dajjal, but they are not the Dajjal. And this is why it's important to understand why there is a definitive attachment, suffix or prefix to that word. The Dajjal is unique, is different from them. So if you think they are deceptors, wait till you see the real guy. So since the seat of impersonation is so high, it's a high seat, it's a high maqam, it's the rank of a prophet. It's the rank of a prophet that he's trying to impersonate. And further through that, he's going to try and attain the rank of divinity. Because he's going to claim, I am God, isn't he? He's going to claim that. So he's going to try and attain that rank as well. So we're not talking about any arbitrary seat. And so we say in this regard, the higher the seat, the more sophisticated the debauchery to impersonate its rightful inheritor. And now this should give us the precedence to recognize the entity that we are dealing with. Because the higher the seat, the more sophisticated, the more complicated the con game. The more difficult it is, the more difficult the security system at the bank, the more complicated the heist will be. Right? So, inshallah, what we want to do, just as we continue along, there are three elements that I want to look at. Now that we've looked at the terms and definitions, I want to touch a little bit on trials and tribulations, because that's what the Dajjal is associated with. Fitna to Dajjal, his trials and tribulations. In order to understand that, we will then look at what is human nature, because we need to understand human nature to know how human nature deceived. How does he deceive you? You need to know. And then we will then look at what is the test of life. So there are two elements to the human condition. And this is examined under the telos of the human being, under teleology. You have logic, and then the studies that go or follow the logical flow of reasoning and understanding. So you have biology, right? And that's the study of the biological organism. And then you have what's known as ontology. Ontology looks at the nature of things. And then you have what's known as teleology. And teleology looks at purpose. Why does a thing exist? Why was it created? The purpose of the human being is defined or divided into two elements. There's purpose of life, and then there's purpose of existence. And these need to be distinguished. So there's a reason why we are in this world. That's the purpose of life. That's the reason why we're in this world, hayat. And then there's a purpose of existence. Why did Allah create us? There are two elements here. He created us means he brought us into existence. We were non-existent. He brought us into existence. So there's a reason why he did that. Second, he sent us into this world, into this state of existence. So this is a state of existence. And it's known as a conscious state of existence. You're conscious. And then there is a different state of existence whereby you are unconscious. You're subconscious. Some of those are applied in the sleep cycle compared to the wakeful cycle. So there is a state of sleep and that's a state of existence. So these are all different states of existence, and then collectively in this world, there is a state of existence called life. And so there's a purpose as to why he sent us into this world and put us into this state of existence. That's the purpose of life. So what we will be looking at, inshallah, is the purpose of life, because the other one is a very complex subject. We could be sitting for hours trying to understand that. I could sit and lecture that for hours. If you really want to understand, we did a series recently entitled that followed the text of Imam al-Ghazali's Kimya al-Sa'ada, The Alchemy of Happiness. Take a look at that. This is a brief introduction into the subject. Inshallah, I'll be finishing the book that I'm writing, Time, Light and Being. It's a philosophical work. So when it's done, inshallah, you'll get some more from that. But it's imperative that this is given thought. You have to contemplate on your reason for existence. Why are you existing? You have to really contemplate that. The test of life, we say, I have categorized, there are many different categorizations and variations and understandings of it, but I've categorized it into 4. There's a test of faith or religion, there's the test of wealth, there's the test of knowledge, and then there's the test of governance, of power. And I argue that these 4 elements are tested by Allah, and then the fitna of Dajjal is brought into these 4 elements. So we want to be able to distinguish the two, because the Dajjal is a creation of Allah, and him creating it means he has also created his fitna with him. So if he sends it your way, then he has sent the fitna your way. And there is a test behind why he's trying you with that tribulation. There is both a gift. I would rather say it's a gift. I wouldn't even call it a curse. There's a gift. There's a reason why you have been created and put in this age and in this time. Allah could have put you in the 12th century. I wish Allah would have put me in the 12th century. I would love to be among the ulama. But Allah has put us in this century or in this time period to endure what they did not have to endure. So there's a reason why that is, and there is a gift to that. There is a blessing in that. There is a khair that he has seen for you that you do not see for yourself. So it is important to contemplate these matters. And if he is sending this fitna your way, it means he is also testing you with it. So you need to learn to distinguish that. And then finally, inshallah, we want to touch very briefly on the introduction of the concept of time, because that is the foundation of this book and this subject of study. You cannot study eschatology if you do not study chronology. Now, I'm not talking about chronology that's studied in Harvard and MIT. That, whatever they're doing, I don't know what it is. That's not chronology. They are looking for ways to time travel. That's their chronology. We want to understand time as a creation of Allah. And we want to understand it in its metaphysical aspect, because we know this is established. Time is not a quantifiable element. It's not a tangible element. We can't see it. We can't touch it, feel it. We can't hear it. But there's an important element it plays, a factor that it plays in the study of eschatology. I'll explain all that, inshallah. Don't worry. I'm just giving you an outline. So, trials and tribulations. Since we say that the word Dajjal or Dajjala can be applied to anything that is deceptive in nature. For instance, a deceptive market system or a deceptive banking system, monetary system, education system, political, whatever it is. If it is deceptive, we can call it a Dajjalic system. Now, whether or not it is from the Dajjal or it is from his minions, that remains a matter, a semantic that can be resolved. But in essence, it is a Dajjalic system. If it is not a prophetic system, then it is a Dajjalic system or a Shaitani system. One of the two. Okay? And so we say that anything that is Dajjalic in nature, whether it's a system, an ideology, a propagation, a device, an object, anything, whatever it might be. Anything that is Dajjalic in nature uses the truth as a disguise to spread falseness but does not affirm the truth at its core. Understand? Page 30. Yeah, page 30. Trials and Tribulations, page 30. Or moving to page 31 anyway. Anything that uses the truth as a disguise to spread falseness but does not affirm the truth at its core is Dajjalic in nature. Or is it Dajjalic thing, object, whatever it is. How does it become a trial and a tribulation then? Since we affirmed in the previous session, we talked about this. We affirmed that the truth is liberating and the truth will set you free. Right? And the truth will set you free. And therefore, we also say that falsehood in this case, if truth is going to open you up, liberate you, set you free, falsehood will do the opposite. Falsehood is going to constrict you, limit you, and essentially turn you into a slave. That's falsehood. Now, there's an interesting element here on the concept of freedom, hurriya. What is hurriya? Freedom. We can give a whole talk on freedom. The Arabs had an interesting way of defining freedom. See, what they define as freedom, the Western world defines as freedom, is to do whatever you want to do. Do whatever you want to do. And do it however you want to do it. All right? Do what thou will. This is their Dajjalic slogan. Free your desires. Follow your desires. What are your desires? Follow those. Do whatever it is you feel like doing. In the Islamic world, however, freedom is defined the other way around. The Arabs, one of the Arab poets said about freedom, Al-Hurru abdun ma tama' wal-abdu hurrun ma qana'. The free man is a slave so long as he is greedy. But the slave is free so long as he is not covetous. So long as you're following your desires, you're a slave. So long as you're following the material world, you're a slave. If that is your goal and ambition, your career, your job, your wealth, your investments, that's your ambition, that's what you're always thinking about, that's what you're always contemplating, you're a slave. Don't justify this to yourself, because you're only just lying to yourself. Don't say work is worship. Akhi, I'm working because work is worship. No, don't justify it to yourself that you're working because work is worship. You can draw a fatwa from wherever you want to draw a fatwa from. But if that is your entire focus in life, that's the only thing you can think about, your tujar, your business, your merchant, that's all you can think about, you are a slave. You are a slave to one thing or the other. When you become a Muslim, when you truly submit, not just by verbally saying it, or that you were born with Muslim parents who named you Abdullah or Muhammad or something. When you truly submit to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does that make you? It makes you Abdullah. And if you're a woman or a girl, it makes you Amatullah. And that's an interesting term, Ama. When we come to the hadith of Jibril, we'll talk about this. It makes you Amatullah, a servant, a slave of Allah. You're a slave of Allah. But what does that make you in relation to everything else? You're free. You're free in relation to everything else. You're a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're free from everything else. Isn't that interesting? Now, who is Allah? Allah is Al-Haq. He is the truth. So long as you're inclined towards the truth, you are inclined towards freedom. And this we say, so long as you make the choice of good, which itself is from the truth. So long as you make that choice which is good, and you do not covet to evil. You see, evil is a capitulation. We talked about this in Kimya al-Sa'ada. Evil is a capitulation. You give in to evil. And when you give in, you submit to evil. You submit to your vices, your desires, your whims, your moods. your anger, your emotions. You submit to those, and so you become a slave to them. But when you choose to do good, then you liberate yourself, because that's free will. Free will is a will that can become free when it frees itself from the vices and the caprices. So when you submit to al-haq, and you submit to the truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the only real, the only absolute, then you free yourself from everything else. So falsehood in that regard is going to be constricting on you. It's limiting, and it's going to enslave you. How do you distinguish the two? We say that anything that is constricting, limiting, and enslaving, by definition, becomes a trial and a tribulation on the individual. Why? Because your fitrah is always inclined towards the truth. Your fitrah is always inclined towards the truth. If you incline yourself towards falsehood, then you are doing an injustice on the fitrah. And that becomes a trial and a tribulation on the fitrah, on your nature. That's fitrah, your nature, your primordial nature. Fitrah is not a component, it's not a device inside your head somewhere. That's not fitrah. Fitrah is your nature. It's your origin, it's your prime origin, your primordial substance of what you are created to be. When he said kun, he created you with this fitrah. Alright? Now a trial is enacted on the mind, and a tribulation will affect the heart. And the heart and the mind have a dynamic of like a sultan and his minister. The heart is the sultan, and then the mind is the minister. And so they are always in communication. The heart uses the minister. The sultan uses the minister, the mind, to draw out information from his subjects, from the government, from the administration, from the troops, from the security, from the villages and the chiefs. All that information comes in. And then the minister's job is to start preparing everything and categorizing everything. Taking what is relevant, throwing out the rest, organizing everything, interpreting it to its best, to the best of its knowledge, and then presenting his findings to the heart. And so now the heart can make a decision, so that the sultan can make his decision as to how he wants to govern his people, his kingdom. This is his dominion. This body is the dominion of the heart, right? And Ghazali says that the shahwa, the desires, are like the government, the administration, the politicians. And he says that they are bureaucrats. They don't do the thinking. They are not intellective. And they can do whatever they want to do. If you leave them in charge, they think they're doing the right thing, but they're just filling their own pockets. That's what politicians are looking for. Politicians are looking for their own pockets. He says that the ghadab, which is the irascible self, the mood, the anger, the seat of emotions, is like the police force. And the police force just knows how to attack. So the police force is vicious, but they also have to follow procedure. They're not thinkers, they're not free thinkers. So if you put these guys in charge, you're going to enslave yourself. Who is yourself? Yourself is your soul. And he says that that's the city. That's the Medina. While this body is the mulk, is the kingdom. And the heart is the sultan, whose palace is in the Medina, in the deepest dimension of the soul. So the trial is going to hit the mind first. The fitna is going to hit the mind first. When it overcomes the mind, it will then become a tribulation on the heart. So you have to recognize how this dynamic works. Trials and tribulations. The trials, the fitna, is going to hit the mind first. And we're going to talk about subjectivity and objectivity in the next chapter. The trial is therefore an effort, a struggle, an endeavor, in the general sense of the term. But in the pursuit of the truth, which we say that it should be easy to find the truth. Why is it difficult to find the truth? It should be easy if the truth is apparent. Since the truth by its nature doesn't hide, it doesn't conceal, there are things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to reveal as and when He chooses to reveal them, but it itself, the truth, doesn't hide, it doesn't conceal itself. Falsehood does. Falsehood plays all these games and tricks and tries to conceal and hide itself. So we say that the truth being made difficult to find, If Allah has made it apparent in front of you, it's right there, but then there is always an impeding element that is preventing you from arriving at the truth. Then that in itself becomes a trial. A tribulation, therefore, after now the trial overcomes you. You fail to pass the trial. Now it overcomes you. Now it becomes a tribulation. So we say a tribulation is an adversity. It's a grief. It's a distress that you have to endure under duress. So we find that falsehood unleashes upon the being undue adversities, undeserving grief, and prolonged distress, particularly in the search of the truth. Since the truth, in its inherent nature, is meant to bring benefit, joy, comfort, liberation. However, when the being is forcibly being prevented from reaching the truth, he finds himself in a state of tribulation. And that's your heart. If your mind did not succeed in contemplating, in figuring things out, in understanding what's going on, in interpreting things the right way, in the proper way, to their fullest extent, so that the heart can have all the information necessary to make a decision, if the mind did not succeed, then the heart is going to be in a state of distress, anxiety, depression. So at this point we conclude that the Dajjal's primus, his nature, is the deceiver, the impostor, whose act and manifestation. This phrase is a technical phrase in the book. Acts and manifestations, and you will see it being used in numerous other places. So keep note of that. Because actions have consequences. Those consequences end up being manifest into the world. We bring it out, we act, and then there's a manifestation. There is an effect that we have, a footprint that we have in the world of creation. So whatever act we do will either have a good manifestation or a bad manifestation. So actions and manifestations. So the Dajjals, the deceivers' acts and their manifestations are to bring about trials and tribulations, both of which are composed for the primary purpose of doing what? Of preventing man from arriving at the truth. That's, in a nutshell, that's his mission. His mission is to prevent you from arriving at the truth. That's the reason why he's doing what he's doing. Because if you arrive at the truth, then he fails. And we'll look at that logic in a bit. In fact, it's right here. Let's look at this. So listen to this logic. Listen carefully. We say that the real challenge lies in success or failure of the deceiver. The real challenge lies in the success or the failure of the deceiver. So listen to these two terms. Failure or success or failure. We say that if man is deceived, then the Dajjal has succeeded in his created purpose. Should I repeat that? If man is deceived, if you are deceived, then the Dajjal has succeeded in his created purpose, because that's what he was created to do, to deceive you. So if you are deceived, then he has succeeded. And if the Dajjal fails, then man has succeeded in his created purpose. If the Dajjal fails to deceive you, then that means, by implication, that you have succeeded in your created purpose. What is your created purpose? It is to follow the truth. It is to follow al-haq. It is to adhere to the Quran and the Sunnah. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ said. What did he say? Listen to this carefully. He said to the Sahaba, if the Dajjal was to come now in his lifetime, I will defeat him by argumentation. It's there, Sunan Ibn Majah. You'll find, I think it's in Sahih Muslim as well. If he was to come now, the Prophet said, I will defeat him with argumentation. Why? Why would he defeat him with argumentation? How does that work? You would think that they would fight, a physical fight, battle it out. Why would he defeat him with argumentation? Because it's an intellectual warfare first. There's a final confrontation against Nabi Isa, but the Prophet ﷺ was not intending to kill the Dajjal. Only Nabi Isa is destined to do that. But he can be defeated in his purpose. He can fail in his purpose. He will be killed by somebody else, the Prophet Isa alayhi salam, but he can be defeated in his purpose. If you fight him at the right level, and the Prophet said, I will defeat him with argumentation. This statement, this word argumentation, is not the argument that we have on our petty issues and trivial matters on Facebook. All right, that's not what he's talking about. Intellectual argumentation, whereby you present the truth so that the falsehood can be removed. So you present truth so that falsehood can be removed, ignorance can be removed. He then said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he didn't say, he and Umar radiallahu anhu, they went to a boy called Ibn Sayyad. And the Prophet suspected this boy to be the Dajjal. There's a different dynamic here. We'll take a look at that in the final chapter, in the last chapter. And in fact, the hadith itself is not in this book. It is going to be the beginning of book 2, volume 2, inshallah. There's something else that needs to be examined here, and that requires its own standing. So he and Umar went to find this boy, Ibn Sayyad. And when they found him, they was playing with some boys. And the Prophet called him aside and started to ask him a few questions. And his answers were very Dajjalic in nature. He was answering he had a sort of a deviancy to his response. And Umar radiallahu anhu wanted to kill the boy. Not because he thought it may have been Dajjal, but because of the way he was responding to the Messenger of Allah. That made him angry. But the Prophet ﷺ stopped him, and he made a very interesting statement. He said, no, Umar, if you kill him, it will be a sin. Why? Because murder. If you kill him and he is not the Dajjal, then you will be killing an innocent boy. Murder. And he said also, Umar, you cannot kill him. If he is the Dajjal, you cannot kill him. So if Umar cannot kill him, who are we to even try and attempt that fight? And why can't Umar kill him? Because this matter has been ordained from the very beginning. The Antichrist will only be physically defeated by Christ himself. But he can be intellectually defeated. He can be reduced to nothing because, and we will look at this also inshallah, he doesn't have any special powers. His only strength is in convincing you that he does have powers, but he doesn't. As soon as all that is exposed, all his trickery is exposed, he is left without anything. So, returning back to the section we were looking at. If you are deceived, he has succeeded. And how will you be deceived? And so, following that, the Prophet ﷺ eventually said, so long as I'm leaving behind you two things, Quran and my Sunnah. So long as you adhere to these two, you will be safe from that fitna. You will be okay. You will be fine. So long as you adhere to these two. That's what your purpose is. That's what you are وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. You are not created for any other purpose but to serve and worship Allah. Ibn Abbas recited that as إِلَّا لِيَعْرِفُونَ, except to know Him. Imam al-Ghazali says in the Kimya, وَمَعْنَاهَا إِنَّا خَلَقْنَا الْقَلْبِ وَأَعْطَيْنَاهُ الْعَسْقَرَ وَالْمُلْكَ حتى يسافر إلى عالم التراب وعاتيناه الملك والعسكر وجعلنا النفس مركبه حتى يسافر من العالم التراب إلى أعلى إليين. Imam al-Ghazali says what that means is that we created the heart and we gave it a dominion and troops, senses, sight, intellect. We gave it all these tools that it can use. And we placed the soul as its vessel. There is a remarkable aspect to the creation of the soul in the fact that it has got these two dimensions. One that is highly intellective, that no other creature on earth has got the same soul as the human soul with such a level of intelligence. But it also has this negative elements to it as well. And those negative elements are not just negative, but if they are kept under control and managed in the right way, they can actually be beneficial to the soul. This is a very unique thing that Allah has created for the human being. So He's placed the soul as its vessel, as the heart's vessel. Why? So that you can journey from this world of turab, of soil, of matter, of dirt, material world, material universe, to the highest of the high. If you're in that path, he can't touch you. The Dajjal cannot do anything to you. But he will try his utmost to ensure you do not take that path, because that is his biggest threat. Anyway, we're sidetracking. So if you are deceived in your purpose, and your purpose being to adhere to the Quran and Sunnah, if you are deceived, then you have failed in your purpose. He has succeeded in his purpose because he deceived you. He managed it. You failed because you did not adhere to what you are created to do. And so the only way you can defeat him is if you follow or adhere to your purpose of creation. So long as you maintain that path, he is not going to succeed. He will fail. So the turbulence here is that man will try to succeed in his created purpose. This is assuming that you are actually following your purpose. We're not talking about those other ones. Man will always try to succeed in his purpose with the asbab, the means that Allah has put in place for him. And the Dajjal will always try to succeed in his purpose with the instruments that are available to him. So understand here why I have used different terminology. Asbab and instruments. The Dajjal does not have asbab. Mankind has been given asbab. He has given you the means. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the means. He's given you scripture. He's given you messengers, prophets. He's given you guidance. He's given you everything. He's given you intellect with which you have been able to do so much. So you have means. The Dajjal doesn't have means. He has instruments. Remember this term, it's technical. It's a technical term here in context here and elsewhere in the book. So, if the Dajjal is following his act of falsehood and you are following your purpose of truth, and these two being opposites, there's going to be a clash. And if there is a clash in the material world, there's going to be damage. And when there is damage of such proportions, everything becomes exposed. Falsehood becomes exposed. He becomes exposed. If he becomes exposed, then he has failed in his mission altogether. Because his mission is to be the imposter. And if he becomes exposed before he can fulfill that mission, then it's lost. It's pointless. And that renders the prophecy also pointless. So now we are in a paradox. How do we resolve this paradox? Because we cannot say that the prophecy is false. And the prophecy cannot be false because it has been ordained. So what do we do? It's a paradox. So listen to this line of reasoning then. If we say that falsehood by its nature is bound to perish, innal batila kana zahuqa. Falsehood by its nature is bound to perish. That means it's very temporal. And this is why we say that falsehood only exists in this world of causality. Evil only exists in this world of causality. World of causality meaning what? This physical, material, biological universe. That's the world of causality. Falsehood only exists here. Evil only exists here. And this world is a temporal world. It's temporary. So falsehood, along with everything else, is bound to perish. Truth, however, is existential. And what we mean by existential is it exists outside a temporal dimension. It has a continuum outside the temporal dimension. This is the temporal dimension. Which is also why we say the human being in his metaphysical aspect has an existential nature. Why? Because we are eternal in our spiritual selves. We are temporal in our biological aspect. And so we have a continuum into eternity. You see how I'm bringing in all these terms about time? These are important. These are very important. So falsehood by its nature is bound to perish. If we say that, then what we mean by this is that the Dajjal has got at his employ a very weak instrument, because the instrument itself is of a temporal creation. It is made of matter. It is made of material. It's not an eternal instrument. It's not infinitum. It's not going to last forever. The instrument itself is very weak and it's very fragile. So, and it's his only instrument. It's his only instrument. We'll identify this instrument. His success therefore lies in utilizing it to the best and most effective aspect of its ability, to maximum efficiency, in a manner in which its weakness is not exposed. So the deception itself works best when it is concealed. Understand? The act of deception then is not only in presenting that which is false in nature, but also concealing that which is true in nature. And that is the nature of a lie. It's always on the surface. It never penetrates down further. We're going to talk about subjectivity and objectivity in the next session. But this is what we entail. The lie is always on the surface. And so if you're somebody who is only doing surface analysis, that's where you are. You haven't penetrated the depth of it. You haven't broken the surface. You're looking at ice. You're looking at ice on the frozen lake, and you assume that the entire lake is frozen. But then a few inches further down the sheet, there's water. There's fish. If you penetrate the surface and understand it deeper, you will understand that there's something else that is at play. There's something else here. If you only sit on the surface, then you are caught up in the lie. And so you are deceived. And the reason why we are studying this is so that we can penetrate the depths. Because we can sit and look at the texts all day long. But the most that we will be doing then is just doing subject analysis. And we will not understand what they mean because we did not penetrate the depth. So now we want to understand how exactly is the human being deceived in this regard. And in order to do that, we want to know exactly how human nature functions at its very fundamental, at its core. This is going to be homework on you, so you need to do some reading as well. I mean, you bought the book, so you might as well read it. But I'll go through this really briefly. Human nature has got two primary categories, two fundamental categories. There's the physical nature and then there's the metaphysical nature. In addition to this, I have divided them into two groups of each. We have on one side, of the physical side, you have got there's a primary element and then there is a tertiary element. On the primary side of the physical being, of the physical existence, is your body, right? And your body needs sustenance, your body needs food, nourishment, it needs basic necessities to survive, clothing, shelter and such. Following that, it needs medicine. So there's a difference between how the believer conducts himself and how the disbeliever conducts himself, because we're all human beings. We all have the same basic necessities. So the believer will obviously follow the guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set for him. And he has said, eat of certain foods, don't eat of certain foods. Drink of certain drinks, don't drink others. Eat in certain quantities, don't exceed those boundaries. Dress in a certain way and live in a certain way. And then there is an aspect of medicine as well. So the believer follows that ordinance, the disbeliever does whatever he wants to do. He will eat whatever he wants to eat, drink whatever he wants to drink, dress the way he or she wants to dress, live the way they want to live, inject themselves with whatever they feel like injecting, take a pill whenever they feel like taking a pill. They call it healthcare. It's not healthcare. Well, it is healthcare, but it's not medicinal healthcare. Medicinal healthcare doesn't involve just treating symptoms and doesn't just involve fixing the effects and only related to the body, only physical causes to effects. That's pharmaceutical. Medicinal healthcare involves both aspects. They have to examine the body, they have to fix the body, and there is certain element. A true doctor, somebody who knows what they're doing, understands what medicine is about, will always take into consideration your mental health as well. And they will all, for the most part, prescribe less of pharmaceutical drugs and more of natural homeopathic remedies in that regard. They'll tell you to take some more sunshine. They'll tell you to eat more carrots. They'll tell you to reduce oily foods. They'll tell you to do all these things because they understand the effects these things have on the body. They will rely more on you changing your diet and following a proper diet than they will rely on the antibiotics that they just gave you. Those are real healthcare professionals. But somebody who just whips out the prescription pad and tells you take ABCD pills, and then you end up going home and dedicating an entire cabinet in the kitchen just for your pills, that's not a medical healthcare. That's not medical healthcare. Anyway, the second category of the physical body is having an ambition. The body needs something to do. There's something that you cannot just sit in one place. You cannot just let it, it's going to rot, it's going to tire out, it's going to become ruined. So you cannot just leave it in one place. You have to do something. Your body has to do amal. And so this is purpose of life. You've been sent into this world for amal, for action. So you have to work. You have to do things, which is why prayer is a physical motion. Fasting is a physical endeavor. Zakat involves physical struggle, earn, calculate, and give. Hajj requires a physical motion of pilgrimage. Even the Shahada has got a physical utterance. Everything, as far as the pillars of Islam are concerned, has a physical contribution of the body. And then that extends outwards now for those who want to justify work is worship. Work hard, work, do the effort, make the effort, do the work, is what I always keep saying. Even if it is in study, whatever it is that you're going to do, put it in motion. Why? Because we're not here to entertain ourselves. We're not here to be in comfort and luxury and retire at the age of 25, 30. We're not here to do that. Retirement in the older days, there's no such thing as an age of retirement. You retired when you died. That's what retire actually means, to To retire, you're gone. Look up the definition, look up the etymology of the word retire. There's no age limit to retire. You kept working. Even if you were an old person and there was limited amount of work you could do, people still kept working. You need to do that. Otherwise, you're going to lose your mind. You're going to lose yourself. And then if you're going to just sit and be distracted and sit in comfort, we don't want to get comfortable here. This is not a world of comfort. You have to be active in this world. You have to keep working. Then comes the metaphysical side. I'm going to spend very little time on this because we are actually, in fact, running short on time. The metaphysical aspect has to be recognized by human beings. Western secular academics today, over the past few decades, have constantly tried to propagate that there is no such thing as a metaphysical dimension to the human being. That we don't have souls. There's no such thing as a soul, spirituality. What are you talking about? There's no such thing. Consciousness. It's just synapses in the head. Just nerves firing, neurons firing against each other. This is what they're propagating. You have to be careful. Like our generation, my generation, we left school, 15 years ago, plus 15, nearly 20 years ago. We had a different system of learning. What I'm seeing from my children, it's a very frightening thing. What they're being taught, indoctrinated rather, that there's no such thing as spirituality, there's no such thing as consciousness, but you will lead your children to believe in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the Western Bunny and all the other bunnies and Halloween. That's you see how their minds work. It's stupidity. They're very stupid people. With all their degrees and qualifications, they're very stupid people. Really, they're very stupid. Ulaika kal an'am, Allah says, bal hum adal, they are far worse than cattle. Ulaika humul ghafilun. They're completely heedless. They have no idea what they're doing. Destroying humanity. The human being has got a physical aspect and a metaphysical dimension as well. Now, metaphysical dimension entails your soul, an-nafs, and your spirit, al-ruh, and your heart, al-qalb, and your mind, al-aql. These are all metaphysical. This component that is in your head, in your skull right now, is not your aql. It's your brain. It's ad-dimagh. It's your brain. It's the physical organ. Corresponding with it, you have got al-aql, the mind, which utilizes the brain to comprehend this physical reality. Because what does the brain do? It receives information from the senses, and then it processes that information to categorize between sound and sight, between what it has picked up as wavelengths, okay, from a vibrating source. I'm talking in physics language. From a vibrating source, you got vibrations in the air, and that's coming in as sound. The brain is going to process that. What's the frequency? What's the amplitude? What's the wavelength? The same thing goes for things that you're looking at insofar as objects. As light bounces off from a source and hits an object, and then you see it, there's a certain amount of reflection that's taking place, or refraction that's taking place. There is texture involved that's highlighted. There is color that is highlighted. There is temperature in the light source as well. All that information is analyzed. It's processed by the brain, and then the image is formed for the mind to access, and the mind interprets what it is looking at. And all this happens in real time, just like that. At the same time, while I'm looking at you right now, my brain is doing the processing. And my mind is receiving and interpreting that. I'm looking at him, I'm looking at him, I'm looking at her in the back. You see? So there's a metaphysical dimension that is also at play here. So what are the purposes of this metaphysical dimension? The first and the primary is learning and acquisition of knowledge. This is what you've been doing the moment you were born. As soon as you came out, and your senses started slowly picking up, this is what you have been doing since day one, since minute one. Your senses have been acquiring information. Your mind has been trying to interpret that information. And it's a continual thing. It's a lifelong endeavor. The mind always needs to know. The mind cannot be idle. The mind cannot sit and not do anything. It always is trying to gain some information so that it can analyze and interpret. And the more knowledge you acquire, the better it becomes. When you do things repetitively, you become entrained in a certain action. When you learn certain words like language, once you master language, like those words or those phrases, once you master them, they become intuitive. You want to reach a level of intuitiveness. You don't want to be only on the level of tuition. You want to reach a level of intuition. These are words. There's a bit of wordplay in there. Tuition, somebody is teaching you. That's tuition. So you go to school, you're getting a tuition. Intuition is when you have brought all that in here and you can bring it out immediately. You don't need anybody to teach you that. That's intuition. You want to develop intuition. You want to develop insight. You want to develop intelligence, not just intelligence. Intelligence is external. And this is why also you have what's known as television. It's telematic. Okay? It's between the frequency of information transferred from the box, from the unit called the television, has the same frequency with which your eyes can acquire that information. So that there's some synchronicity between the images that are being transmitted and what the information is that's being received. So there is a television between the two of you. It is external. Okay? So there is intelligence taking place when you are acquiring that information physically. That's intelligence. When your ears are hearing sounds and you're able to distinguish those sounds between the pitch and the amplitude and the wavelength of the frequencies of what's being transmitted, there's intelligence taking place. Intelligence now is taking that information and interpreting it and putting it into the proper categorization or the proper format or the proper analysis so that your heart can then take what the mind has done and understand it. That's when ma'rifah happens. Ma'rifah happens in the heart. Comprehension takes place in the heart. Okay? Is everyone with me? I'm seeing some blank faces. Are you okay? Don't worry about all that, inshallah. Don't worry, it'll come inshallah, slowly. These are just technicalities. But the point is that you've got an externality and an internality. And so what you want to develop is your internality, not your externality. Your externality will help you insofar as developing your internality, but you have to recognize that ultimately you want to build internal aspects. Insight, introspection, intuition, intelligence, these inner dimensions is what you want to improve. Why? Because when you die and you move on to the next phase of your existence, you're going to leave this body behind. And that includes the brain and the senses. You're going to leave all that here. So you need to have you need to have accumulated enough so you can carry it forward with you. That's the knowledge, not the information. The information you leave it here. Information is of this world. Information exists in this world. Knowledge is what you will be able to take with you. Knowledge is of a metaphysical reality. Information is of a physical reality. Right. So that was the first primary of the metaphysical purpose. What is the purpose? What's the reason that the intellect was created? To acquire knowledge. Khalas. Leave it at that. What was the heart? What is its purpose? Why was it created? To comprehend. Ma'rifah. Leave it at that. The intellect, ilm. The heart, ma'rifah. Understand? Do the reading because the explanations are all in there. So do the reading. The second category of that metaphysical aspect now relates to the being seeking to prove its reason, its purpose of existence. The more knowledge you acquire, the more what happens is a remembrance takes place. This is going into philosophy now. We have what's known as a priori knowledge. Plato argued that knowledge itself is not something you acquire in this world. Rather, it is something that you already had before you came into this world. And the only thing that you're doing is you're actually, through the process of learning, is you're just remembering. Because you cannot know something unless you actually, you cannot remember something unless you already knew it before. And then Socrates argued that there has to be a connection, an intimate connection between the knower and the thing to be known. In other words, knowledge itself has already been imprinted in you. And where is this evidence in the Quran? It's in the Quran, it's true. Otherwise I wouldn't quote Plato or Socrates or Aristotle or any such. Yeah, Greek philosophy, we understand where the limitations lie. The only reason I would cite them is if there is something verifiable in there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it in where? In Surah Al-Baqarah. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا وَعَلَّمَ. Imam Raghab al-Isfahani says that this allama is an imprintation. It's an ilham that Allah has inspired into the human being. He's already put everything there. It's just a matter of unlocking it. That's what Imam Raghab al-Isfahani says in his it's in the Mufradat, I believe. The allama is, people say Allah taught Adam the names of everything. So because we are thinking in the English language. See, that's what the English means. He taught Adam the names. So if I tell you that Abdurrahman taught Musa the names of all the characters, what's going on in your mind? That Abdurrahman sat down with Musa, told him, okay, now this is the name and this is this. And see, that's what's going on in your mind in the English language. But in the Arabic, there is a different understanding. Wa'allama, because the original meaning of allama had nothing to do with classroom. In fact, the classroom system is something that the Muslims brought when the first universities were established. The dars. That was the classroom system of learning. It never existed before. You actually learned through following. You followed the scholar. You sat with the scholar, and when they would speak, and when they would, in the same way that we're doing right now. I don't have a blackboard. I don't have whatever that. I mean, we're using the slideshow, but that's okay. But the traditional way of learning is to sit, listen, observe, watch, question, and receive clarification, disambiguity. And then the rest you had to try and figure out yourself. The allama in its original use of the word had nothing to do with learning in the classroom. Allama meant to imprint. And this is why alama, a mark, alama to sa'a, alama is signs of the hour. A sign or a mark is something that is imprinted. Like this sign, this signage, this pattern and everything. This has been imprinted onto this material. The sign has been imprinted onto this. This piece of paper with all the words and symbols onto it, the symbols and the signs have been imprinted onto this piece of paper. So think of your mind or your soul or your heart in this case as this piece of paper. Think of it in that sense. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala imprints all that knowledge into your heart. All those names. Because how do we learn? How do we learn? What's the method of learning? It's through names and definition. What did we start off with? We started with terms and definitions. We name things, we define them, we describe them. Each of those is a name, it's a word. In fact, there's an argument in Arabic grammar, the Kufi, between the Kufi school and the Basri school. They argue which came first, the verb or the noun. Right? It's that the age-old chicken or egg question, which came first, right? So anyway, point being that this is what that entails. So There's an aspect of already igniting what you already know, and it's a method. It's a matter of remembering all that, and that ultimate remembrance is remembering your Lord. So the Quran in that regard is called al-dhikr, because that knowledge that the Quran brings about reminds you of things that you have forgotten. Okay, we don't have the time to go. I don't have the time to go into explaining what forgetfulness also entails, philosophically speaking, and memory. What does memory entail? We'll talk about that inshallah another time. So there's a purpose that you have to fulfill. Your heart has to fulfill this purpose of remembering who your Lord is, because he asked this question before he sent all of us into this world. Alastu bi rabbikum? Bala shahidna. We testified he is our Lord. Most of us don't know. We never knew. When you were a child, a baby, you never knew. You had to be reminded. Your parents reminded you. Yeah, the same way that I remind my children. Allah is going to be happy if you do this. Allah is not going to be happy if you do that. You see, you remind, and this reminder is an ongoing thing. Ultimately, we have the test of life, and I think I'm going to end with this because we are running short on time. We've already taken up so much time. The test of life is divided into 4 categories. There's the test of faith, and so the Dajjal and his Dajjalic forces are going to test you through their fitna. They'll subject you to that fitna, to create doubts so far as faith is concerned, to create this confusion in religion, to create an environment whereby religion itself is reduced to rules and dogmas. So what's being propagated from the world today? So look at the dynamic that we're doing. Look at the methodology we are applying. We are examining what's the present state. We examine what was the previous state, and then we are using that to understand or anticipate what will be the future state. What are they doing right now? What are the ideologies right now? One of the ideologies is that belief is just an opinion. Okay, so everyone is entitled to their own beliefs, just like everyone is entitled to their own opinions. So you have all these Facebook muftis, right? They come on Facebook and then they start bringing out their own understanding of the religion. And if you don't follow their methodology, then you are kafir, you are all these other names. I don't like uttering them. It's despicable to even have those terminologies in our tradition. But, you know, they come up because why? They are entitled. You can't do anything to him. So on Facebook, the most you could do is maybe block the guy. They keep doing their thing. Then you have things like Quranists, bypass the entire tradition of tafsir and hadith and scholarship of 1400 years and go straight to the Quran. These are tests. These are trials, because there's a danger there that they don't see what they're getting into. Now, an interesting thing happens here. There is a fundamental reason why there's an opposition to religion. And this, you do a bit of your own homework. This is not conspiracy theory. This is truth. Do your own homework into things like transhumanism, posthumanism. Look at all these elements and see exactly what these people are working on. Their fundamental ideology aligns with the ideology of Iblis. That's the first thing that he proposed to Adam and Hawa. What did he say? Oh Adam, hal adulluka? Should I show you the tree of immortality and a kingdom that never decays? Should I show you the tree of immortality? So this, and we always say this, understanding what happened in the beginning is going to enable you to understand what's going to happen in the end. This is part of eschatological study. So this is their essential pursuit, to conquer death, to be immortal, right? To be immortal. This is one thing that they will never wrap their heads around. There's a difference between being immortal and being eternal. Immortality just extends the life of the body. It just extends the life of the body. But the soul and the heart don't belong to this world. They're yearning to go back into the other world. You can extend the life of the body as much as you want, but the term of duration that has been ordained in this world will come to pass. And there's nothing anyone can do about that. Now, how are they trying to do all these things? And this is the reason why they're afraid of religion. Yes, they are afraid of religion. Phobia is a fear. Phobia is not hatred. See, this is how they manipulate terms also. Islamophobia, they present it as a hatred of Islam. But a hatred comes after the fact. It's a symptom. The root cause is a phobia. It's a fear. It's a fear of Islam. It's a fear of religion. Why do they fear religion? Because religion provides the answer to the question, what is the meaning of life? As the meaning of life is death. That's in short. Age-old question, what is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is death. Khalas. Because the only reason you are alive is so you can die. That's the only reason you're alive. You have been sent into this world so that you can die, because the death is what's going to transition you into the next state of existence. And the duration of your term in this world has to be utilized in a manner which will purify the heart, purify the soul, build the intellect, become what he intended you to become. And as your duration ends, you die, and now you transition into the next phase of your existence where another purpose awaits. Another, akhirah. That's one of the meanings of the word akhir, or akhar, or ukhra. Okay? Another, next, after. That's why it's called hereafter. It's existent, the hereafter is existent, while this world is existent, but it's the other world. That's why it's called hereafter. Life after death. Life after death. Then that's the question they ask, do you believe in life after death? They say, no, we don't believe in life after death. We only believe in life before death. Well, we believe in life before death because we are alive right now. It's kind of a fallacy to even utter it. It's kind of dumb, stating the obvious. But do you believe in life after death? How do you believe in life after death? How do you ratify it? How do you justify it? How do you arrive at that truth? Religion gives you the answer. Revelation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created you and the world and all its other dimensions and all its and its longevity as he has ordained it to be, he is the one who can give you the answer. And the answer he has given you through his revelation is to say that the meaning of life, the reason why you are alive, is so that you can die. And it is at the moment of death that the meaning of life is truly unveiled. You know how they say your life flashes before you die, right? You see your entire life flashing before you. That's literally what it means. It's at that moment that you realize what you've done and what you should have done and what you didn't do and what you should have done. That's the moment you realize that the time you had is over. You wasted it. Or if you accomplish something, and those who accomplish something will go with a smile. Have you seen that? I've seen that happening. I've seen my grandmother pass away. She passed away with a smile. And they said, and my grandfather passed away when I was a year old. And they told me, my dad told me, my uncles told me, he passed away with a smile. It's knowing that you accomplished your life. You used it in the manner that was ordained. You did something. But those who are struggling and clinging and fighting it, it's because they have realized that they wasted their time. Now the meaning of life is being unveiled. Isn't that what Fir'aun was asked? When he said, now I believe in the Lord of the Banu Israel. Al-an? Now? Pharaoh? Now? وَقَدْ عَصَيْتَ قَبْلِ. Before all this, you were in obstinate denial. You were rejecting me. Now you want to turn. Time is up, my friend. Then comes the test of wealth, health, and indulgence. Allah says He is going to test you with your health, your wealth, your children, and obviously whatever it is you indulge in. So the test of wealth is such as what? Allah has given some and He has not given some. And those whom He has given, the test is to share their wealth. And those whom He has not given, the test is to be patient. But what do we have happening? 1% of the world is richer than 99% of the world put together. And they call that capitalism, and they wear it like a bloody crown on their head, thinking that they have achieved what humanity has never before achieved. The great saviors of our race. وَإِذْ قَالَ لَهُمْ وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا قالوا ما? What do they say? إنما نحن مصلحون. We're just doing good. We're do-gooders, trying to make the world a better place. ألا إنهم هم المفسدون ولكن لا يشعرون. They are the ones causing corruption, but they have no clue. They have no idea. They haven't a sense of it. They have created an imbalance of wealth. They've created a complete imbalance. Somebody can have billions, $300-400 billion worth. They did a calculation and they said if every one of those billionaires would just contribute $1 million, just $1 million, if every one of those billionaires would contribute just $1 million from their share, they would easily resolve the food crisis for a year. Meaning that everyone who is stricken by famine will have food for a year if every one of these billionaires just contributed $1 million from their pockets. Elon Musk the other day, this is Muslims are very astonished at how Muslims behave. They regard this guy like a hero. He's not your hero. Some Muslims admire him almost as they admire him more than they admire their prophet. They calculated and they said if Elon Musk was to just provide $6 billion from his share of billions, they would resolve world hunger. This was made, I don't know who made this proposition calculation, somebody from the United Nations, I believe. And this guy comes on Twitter and makes a counter. And you, if you understand language, by the way, if you study language, you can read the arrogance. A lot of people can't. You can read the arrogance. Because there's a measure, there is a metric, there's a way to analyze speech in text. Anyway, he came out and said, if the United Nations can prove to me that they will actually resolve, I will give them all my money right now. This was his arrogance. This was his statement back. Because it's Twitter wars between billionaires. And in the duration of that Twitter war, there are probably thousands of people who just died of hunger. $300-400 billion, I think he's worth, or something. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And he was told just all you have to do is give $6 billion. That's it. That's it. Much. You alone give us $6 billion. Will resolve world hunger. And Muslims need to stop worshipping this fellow. Allah, just stop it. Stop idolizing him. You're actually idolizing him. I'm not negating his achievements and his accomplishments. I'm not. I think he's a brilliant scientist in that regard, technology-wise. I do. I really think he's brilliant in that sense. Very intelligent. But the things that he's doing and the areas in which that intelligence is being directed towards is actually part of the Dajjalic program. I don't know whether he knows it or not, or whether he's part of the system. He might be a secret Freemason or something. I don't know. But his contributions are actually adding to the problem. They're not solving the problem. Okay? You need to recognize that element there. And if one of you meet him, please give the poor fellow some dawah. Give him some sense into understanding what it is that he's doing with his artificial intelligences and everything. He's not solving anything. He's making it worse. Anyway, then comes the test of knowledge. We talked a little bit about knowledge, but I'm not going to go too much into this right now because we are going to talk about knowledge and information. So knowledge will be tested. People will be tested with their knowledge. And this idea of having intellectual properties, Muslims are starting to fall into the same category of having intellectual properties, a hegemony on their ideas. I understand copyright law. I do. I understand copyright law. As a writer, I know what copyright law can do and why it is beneficial. I understand that. Okay? It protects my writing because this is my livelihood. I earn my livelihood through selling of books. I put in the time, I do the research, I compile, I write, I publish, I sell books. So I understand copyright laws because I wouldn't want somebody to just take what I have written, spent years working on, take it, put their own name on it, and then sell it as their own, right? I don't want that to happen. But the idea cannot be an intellectual property. In the fact that I'm sitting here and sharing this with you, has anybody asked you for money? I'm not asking anybody for money. And you shouldn't. Ideas are to be shared. This is the fallacy with which the modern world is operating with. Because to them, knowledge is it has got a price. There is a value to it, money-wise. This is why the universities are so expensive. Student loans off the charts. People going in to get an education and they come out slaves. Well, why? Look at you've got student loans. You've got student loans as well. Where is he? You've got student loans. People going in to get an education, to acquire knowledge, and then they come out as slaves. I read an article once about a woman who graduated as a lawyer. Now she thought that she will be a lawyer, and lawyers make a lot of money. It became a struggling thing for her because unless you actually make it, then you make a lot of money. She started her education with $80,000 of a loan. $80,000 of a loan. Over the duration of the repayment of that loan, during her education and post about 5 years further, she had paid $120,000. $120,000. That's $40,000 more than what she had initially started with. But guess what? She still owes $76,000 to be paid on that loan. She started with 80. She ends up paying 120 to date. Well, whatever the date was when the article was published. And she still owes $76,000. How's that possible? Subhanallah. This is riba, isn't it? Look at how much it enslaves these people. Look at that. And these same people, they find themselves in situation, young people who then have no choice but to say, I cannot get married right now. I cannot get myself a car. I cannot even look at a house. They have to work 2, maybe 3, even 4 jobs just to pay off those loans. And then they will be able to save money for themselves. They end up going into their 30s and 40s and then now they're trying to get married and have a family. They've lost the prime of their youth. It's an enslaving society because they put a price on knowledge. Knowledge is not an object, it's not a thing. Information, yes. Information can be sold, can be bought and sold. I'm selling information in this book. I've put the information that I'm selling. Information can be bought and sold. Knowledge, you cannot have a price on that. This notion that divulging knowledge will somehow reduce its value is a completely selfish notion. And it's driven by arrogance at its paramount. It not only seals the heart from receiving knowledge, it also devalues and disgraces the individual and additionally corrupts that knowledge. This is why it's important to distinguish between knowledge and information. See, this is, and you will be tested in this accord. And this has always been a debate among ulama. For instance, there used to be a debate, an ikhtilaf between whether or not ulama should charge for teaching the Quran. This was there, yeah. I mean, I think there's still an ikhtilaf on this. Some ulama say you shouldn't charge about teaching the Quran. Others say no, it's okay. And the fact that this ikhtilaf exists shows you that there is a tension here. And so long as this tension exists, it will keep Muslims within the boundaries. You see? There used to be a lot of debates as to whether or not scholars should charge to deliver lectures. So some scholars, they have a fee. They do. They have a fee. You have to pay them to come and lecture at your masjid. Those who know, they know, right? Most of us, in terms of the audience, we're not aware of this. But like those who organize these lectures, like masajid and their committees, they know. And the higher, the more popular the scholar, the higher the fee. And you have to pay for their accommodation and their food and their transport and everything in addition to that. They charge for that. They charge heavy amounts. I'm not going to name the names, but they know themselves. And then they've justified it from their understanding of the fiqh. They've removed their own fatwas and justified it. They know themselves. I don't. Alhamdulillah. Don't charge. The final test is the test of governance. The test of governance is the khilafah or the khalifa. Now, this is a very heavy subject in and of itself. So we're going to talk about this at different time. Okay? What I want you to understand, I want you to do some homework, is to go in the Quran and look at two ayats. Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 30. Write that down. Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 30. And Surah Al-Sad, ayah number 26. These are the only two instances in which the word Khalifa has been mentioned in the Quran. There might be more, I don't know. But to my knowledge, these are the only two instances. Look at the difference between these two instances and understand the difference between the Khalifa who is been sent to govern himself, to purify himself, to control himself. And then the Khalifa who is appointed to be the leader of a state, of a nation. Understand these two elements. I don't like getting into arguments with people, particularly Hizb ut-Tahrir and Muslim Brotherhood and all these organizations. These are political movements. If you don't like me saying that, there's nothing I can do to change that. These are political movements. Whatever khilafah they are trying to establish is a political khilafah. Let's leave it at that. Don't fall into their traps. Don't fall into their allures. They're very good at this. Okay? They're very good at sloganeering. And yes, khilafah is dear to our hearts as Muslims. And any Muslim who says that he doesn't want khilafah or rejects the khilafah, that person doesn't deserve to call themselves Muslims. Khilafah has always been part of our religion, but in the manner that these political groups and activists are trying to establish it is completely wrong. And if you study their works, you study their materials, you will understand. Many of their members become former members when they ultimately realize what kind of agenda is at play here. These are political parties, and they are stringing the word of Islam and quotations and citations from scholars to justify their actions. That is not the Khalifa that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has intended for you, and this is why there is a test of governance. When power rests on the foundation of faith, It is tested. It will always be tested. These four elements that we have highlighted, these four tests that build up the test of life, can be summarized into Tawheed, which is part of our Aqidah. That's the test of faith. And then Tawazun, which is the balance, living in moderation. And then Ilm, knowledge. And then Khilafah, governance or succession. These elements in and of themselves are not physical elements. They are all metaphysical elements, because you cannot see Tawheed. Can you see Tawheed? Can anyone see Tawheed? You can't see Tawheed. It's belief. It's a ratification in the heart. Tawazun. Can you see Tawazun? Can you see the balance? Are you able to see the balance in your life? You can't. You have to understand that there is a balance or there is an imbalance. Ilm. Can you see knowledge? You can see the book. You can see the writing. You can see the information. Can you see knowledge? You can't. Khilafah. You can see the Khalifa when he's sitting on the throne. You can see the Khalifa. But where is Khilafah? Can you point at a building and say this is Khilafah? Can you point at somebody and say that one is Khilafah? No. Governance has got a metaphysical aspect as well. And so this again goes back to all these political movements, Hizb ut-Tahrir and whatnot. Okay? It's not just about constitution and fiqh. There are spiritual aspects that are involved. There are philosophical matters that have to be looked at as well. There are thought processes that have to be analyzed. It's not just a matter of calling for khilafah. You know, going out to all the masajid and beating their drums, calling khilafah. What are you doing? What's wrong with you? And then they get upset when you counter their arguments. They get very upset. Yeah. Have you? They're probably going to hate me for saying this. Because I've never spoken about them in that regard. But it reaches a point whereby you just have to say something. They get very upset. And they get upset to the extent of then now starting to label you. So I've been called a Sufi by them. I've even been called Salafi by them. Oh, this guy is just Salafi. I'm wondering, one of you is calling me Sufi, the other one is calling me Salafi. I don't know which one I am. Astaghfirullah. They get very upset and they start, and they don't have proper lines of reasoning or argumentation. They don't. There are incredible fallacies in their presentations because they haven't studied these sciences. They don't know how to argue their point. They don't. They get upset. They start shouting. They start yelling. They start calling you names. They're very good at pulling out, quotations and citations. They're very good at that. But anyone can do that. Even Orientalists can do that. That's what they're doing. They do that to justify their feminism. They do that. They do that when they want to counter-oppose and show how religion is flawed. They pull out the same quotations we have in our texts. It's not different than what they're doing, Hizb ut-Tahrir and them. They're doing the same thing. They pull out the same quotations and citations and they show, look, proof, dalil, hada, shuf hada, look, dalil, it's right here. Ghazali said this and Ibn Taymiyyah said khilafah, and that's not how you argue, brother. That's not how you build a reasonable argument. If you're coming to me with that, or anybody who is intelligent enough with that, you're just embarrassing yourself. That's not how you present a reasonable argument. And it's for this reason that all these political movements in their 70 years of establishment have never established anything. They have been existent. Hizb ut-Tahrir has been here since what, 1947, 1948 or 42 or something? 70 years and nothing to show. Nothing to show. Where's your khilafah? When the Taliban took over Afghanistan after fighting for 3 decades, all that fighting, they struggled for 3 decades. That's when Hizb ut-Tahrir sent out an email, or a letter or something. They made a post on their website. Or we invited the Taliban to come and have talks with us and work towards the establishment of the Khilafah. You are inviting them? They've been struggling for the last 3 decades. Where were you when they were struggling? Where were you? You were handing out pamphlets. When they needed people to help them, where were you? You were handing out pamphlets outside the mosque. Establish Khilafah. It will solve all our problems. Khilafah, all problems gone. Khalas. This is their argument. This is the fundamental argument. Khilafah, establish, problem solved, brother. This is how they reason. Where were you when they needed your help? When the world was calling them terrorists, extremists, this, that, and the other, you were right there with them, calling them the same exact names, violating women's rights, and women's rights have been violated, and women's rights are... You are shouting the same bloody slogans. It's there. It's on your websites. Go look it up yourselves. Most of these people don't know their own material. They don't read their own material. They go by the pamphlet that they've been given by the recruitment officer. That's it. That's all the information they have. And now you want to invite them. You're inviting the Taliban to come and sit with you and establish Khilafah. You must be joking. And even the Taliban said you must be joking, because they didn't respond to that. They haven't responded to date. Because it's a joke. It's essentially a joke, whatever it is that they're doing. You see, you can't go out and try to establish a political Khilafah when the Muslim world is lacking in spiritual and intellectual aspects. You need to at least establish the Tawheed and the Aqidah and the sciences in the correct way before you can even think about Khilafah, state governance. There's a reason why the Ottoman Caliphate crumbled. There's a reason why. It's not because they were few in number, and if the Muslim world had just united, we could have defeated. That's not why they lost. They lost because the Muslims themselves wanted secularism. This is the fundamental change. Mustafa Kemal, this is what his political party went out to establish. They wanted secularism. They didn't want religion anymore. So when Muslims abandon their religion, no matter of state governance is going to resolve it. You need to re-establish a religion, then you can establish Khilafah. The Prophet ﷺ spent years in Mecca doing the da'wah, establishing Tawheed, clarifying all those semantic issues that came out from Tawheed. Only then did they go to Medina, and even that, it took some time. It took some time. You know, people think that the Prophet, as soon as he arrived in Medina, within the hour, Khilafah was established. Where do you even get that from? It took time. They had to go through refinement processes as the Sharia itself was slowly being unfolded for them. As many of the semantics were being resolved, it took time. It's not a simple thing as just call for Khilafah, call for Khilafah. This is what, and now they have their, and here's the interesting thing. Wherever they go, they get banned. Wherever they go, even in Muslim lands, they get banned. Why? Is the whole Muslim world wrong and you're right? Because that's the justification. Oh, Muslims, they don't want Khilafah. That's why they're doing this to us. This is Iblis's language. This is the arrogance of Iblis. فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي. Isn't that what he said? You led me astray. Or because you led me astray, so that's why I did the wrong thing. Or because they don't want Khilafah, that's why. No, brother, change your tactic, change your methodology. Everyone wants Khilafah. Everyone wants Khilafah. And like I said, we're all for it. But there's a certain methodology you will need to apply. And that methodology is a prophetic methodology. You need to nurture people before you can impose rules on them. You want to establish state governance and start off with establishing constitution and rules and enforcement, but you don't want to nurture the people. Why should they follow the rules? This is what the Prophet ﷺ spent his life doing. He was a murabbib in that sense. He nurtured his people. There was a tarbiyah. Islam is not a political ideology. People need to wrap their heads around that. Don't turn your religion into a political ideology. This is what these groups have been doing. Anyway, let's end here, inshallah. There's another topic, and that's the concept of time. But this itself is going to require some time. So we'll start off with this, inshallah, next session. It's on page 40. I'd like you to do some reading. It's just, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 pages. Do some reading on that. Make some notes. And we'll look at the topic, inshallah, in more detail. And I'll explain some of those concepts that you asked me about earlier. Let's end here, inshallah. Subhanaka wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. بارك الله فيكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم. جزاك الله خيرا.